Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? Again, we have a nice full house. We have my fellow elves, Kathy and Christine, who help keep everything organized here. But we have Elf Michael with us, who solved today's wish. And we have Lee Gardner Dewey, who was the wishee. So this is very exciting. I hope you enjoy today's episode. We have a story for you. So before we go any further, welcome. If this is your first time watching one of our Days of Elfmas videos, we're from WikiTree. We're a free genealogy website where genealogists collaborate. And during these last 2 weeks, we're in the middle of a 2-week period where elves, Secret Santa, WikiTree elves help other WikiTreeers and find, solve mysteries, break down brick walls. And we have one mystery that's revealed today. So that'll be great. And as we've done with all of them, I'll start us off with a little verse to get us in the mood. On the 6th day of Elfmas, a keen elf gave to me 6 occupations. And then the other 5 verses, you'll have to tune in the final day to hear them all together in one big long song. But 6 occupations, that's sort of the tagline. That's the thing that we're teasing you with. But the story that we're going to be talking about is much more than just 6 occupations. So there's my little, if you can sing, or write it down. And Lee, since you're actually right here, why don't you read your letter to Santa?
Dearest Santa, in less than a month, I'll be 72 and I'm running out of time to solve a mystery. I started when I was 16 doing genealogy and as yet cannot break through the brick wall of my second great-grandfather's, sorry, it's hard to say, second great-grandfather's father. I carry his name and yet don't know who the man was. Charles Gardner, 17793. Please solve this mystery before I die. Distant relatives have proposed solutions but don't provide any sources. I know he must have been from New York and his father's name was Jesse. I still believe in your power, Santa. Work a miracle, please.
That's great. So thank you, Lee, for reading that. Mm-hmm. So when we were going through, Christine and Kathy and I, we go through all the wishes that were solved. And by the way, how many are solved now, Christine?
I have lost count.
That's wonderful to hear.
That is wonderful. Kathy, do you know what the number is? How many have we documented so far that have been solved?
I don't know. I know there's still some that I think have solved but need to be moved down to the final count, but we're definitely more than last year.
We're already more than last year. And we're only halfway through the days of Elfmas. We're on the 6th day. There's 12 days altogether. So that's pretty exciting.
We have 34 on the list that are marked as solved.
And there's a bunch of others that we
have to go through and move a bunch more.
So when we were looking at, of course, because I am obsessed with the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, and we're trying to fit every wish, every segment into one of those. We were looking for a 6. And so Christine found this profile that you worked on, Michael, and said, well, this guy, Charles Gardner, he's had like 6 occupations. So she wrote them down. Mm-hmm. But you have, that profile has grown like in twice the size since we first looked at it. There's probably more. So this may not actually be an accurate, but we're going with 6 occupations because he has had at least 6. Should we go with that?
And then he became a dairy farmer.
I don't have dairy farmer on there. We don't have
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, no, that's going to ruin it all.
Reconvene tomorrow then.
Well, that is amazing. Well, I'm glad you're both here. And so, Michael, I'm going to turn it over. Do you want me to, first of all, there is the profile, but do you want me to drive or do you want to share your screen? And
you can go ahead and drive.
Okay. You just let me know where you want me to scroll around and if there are links or if you want me to click on a source citation and go to the original site.
Okay.
You lead the way.
I'll let you know. So I wanted to be an elf this year. This is my first time being an elf. It sounded really fun, but I wasn't confident in my abilities, and I was a bit intimidated by all the wishes. It seems like it's things that experts couldn't solve. I didn't feel I could solve. So I was looking through them, looking for a wish that I thought I could solve, and this looked great. You look at a colorful man. It didn't look too hard. It looked like several people on my heritage and ancestry had already solved the problem. Long story short, I seriously underestimated how difficult this would be, and how fun it would be. I got in way over my head, and I kind of like being in that position. So I'm still trying to figure out one of the key questions that Lee asked, which is who's his father? And I want to give a shout out now to Kay Knight and Margaret Toll, who helped me immensely over the last couple of days get very close to an answer on those questions. So you can go ahead and scroll through the profile.
Okay.
I talk and drive that way.
Okay. Super.
I do tend to be a bit wordy, so I went ahead and I put an introduction up there to make it easy to have it be a too long.
Yeah.
Didn't read.
I'm just going to put the link to Charles Gardner's profile in the chat. So if other people want to check it out and feast on the beauty of this profile, go right ahead.
So there's I don't think there's anything special about my approach. I mean, I'll go over my approach. I think one of my bits of secret sauce is I'm a person who doesn't give up. So at some point, Lee may actually have to physically tear me away from this profile. He's become like family to me. So I use an iterative approach, and I like to synthesize everything. I come from an academic background, so I like words. I like to use them, perhaps a bit too much. I began with what I call a scaffold of records. I like to just go in and find the most basic records, the birth, marriage, death, none of which were there. Although there was one marriage record. The censuses. This is the first person that I've worked on. I found a lot that are double counted on censuses. He's the first one I found who was missed by 2 censuses in a row. He just wasn't on the 1870 or 1880 census. The 1870 census makes sense. He was en route, overland or by sea, between Sacramento and his new home in Portland, Oregon. So that's easy. But why he wasn't on the 1880 census, I don't know.
And then your 1890 census is missing, right?
1890, yeah. That's, but yeah.
So that's basically 3 in a row that, you don't have records for.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And then from there, and I like to practice record scraping. That was something that just make sure you extract every last tidbit from the record. I like to keep a combination map and timeline in Google Earth Pro to help me visualize where things are. And that helped clear up a bunch of things because other people had said he lived in 2 different places. I'm going to switch over and look at mine now. One was, what was it? Is it Lake Pepin?
Lake Pepin.
Lake Pepin. And the other was Westervelt Westervelt. But with maps, you can see that's the same place. Westervelt is right there on Lake Pepin. Sorry, 1 second while I switch back and forth with all of my screens. I like to layer in. When I said I'd like to take a synthetic approach, I want to get my goal of the profile in WikiTree is to get everything that we know about this person in one place, which I realize a lot of people think is overdoing it. But I would love the WikiTree profile to be the starting point for any future researcher to take off. So I layer in everything I can find, but only if I can find sources for them. And then I start to look for the color. And that's where it really took off. Starting to look for newspaper clippings especially. I have yet to find a newspaper service that I don't subscribe to because there's so little overlap between them. So I used Genealogy Bank, Newspaper Archive, newspapers.com, Chronicling America. The one I'm forgetting, that's the California repository at UC Riverside. There's an Oregon historic newspaper repository. Normally, I'd be using the Minnesota State Historical Society, but they've decided to shut their online catalog down right now. Well, not shut it down, but take it offline while they try and upgrade it. Yeah, and I found a lot of interesting pieces that that all told part of his story, and each had often a little bit of an exaggeration in them. So it was a real interesting job in trying to reconcile everything. One of those things was his time as governor. One source said that after serving in the territorial legislature and being the Speaker of the House in the Minnesota territorial legislature, he was nominated by Buchanan as the governor for the New Dakota Territories, which makes sense. Buchanan was the one who proposed them in the late 1850s, but there's absolutely nothing there to indicate that Buchanan put forward his name or anyone's name as governor. Another source said Abraham Lincoln put forth his name as governor of the Dakota Territories. Again, makes sense. Well, as Buchanan informed it, Abraham Lincoln was the one who got to make the territory a reality and decide who's going to be the governor. But no indication in congressional or presidential records that Charles's name came up there either. His son, Charles A. Gardner, who went on to become a lawyer himself and to edit several newspapers, apparently told one of his friends who runs another newspaper, "Oh yeah, my dad was the first governor of Montana." And again, I could find not he was almost, but he actually was. Could find nothing there that he was the governor of the Montana Territory or the Idaho Territory that preceded it. I suspect there's a grain of truth in there somewhere, but it's given me the impression that Charles was somebody who lived a large life and liked to tell stories about himself to his children and to others. And I don't know if he was prone to exaggeration or whether the stories themselves were prone to being enlarged and getting legs of their own, but the stories did tend to move. So that's one thing I'd like to keep digging on. What's the grain of truth in this governor of a territory story? It's something that, yeah. But yeah, he was an interesting man. His time in politics was interesting. He was a lawyer, possibly from his time in New York, but certainly from the early 1840s. He had practices in Illinois, then moved to the Minnesota Territory and opened practices there.
I love you've got the clippings there of the ads with the instructions on how to get to the office. Yeah,
I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
Especially when it gets to be, I know academics like to read long books with absolutely no illustrations and pictures in them, but I don't. That's one of the things I didn't like. Give me picture books any day. So I love a lot of good illustrations, so I like to include them there.
Yeah. And just as the museum, is there only one museum in Chicago, or was there only one museum in Chicago at the time?
Once I solve some of these big problems, that's one thing I'd love to find. I work in a museum as my day job. I would love to find out what this is. At first I thought, oh, okay, it's the Art Institute or it's the Field Museum. Those are relatively new museums. The Field Museum is only like 1892 or something. None of the museums in Chicago date to this period. So I don't know what it was. This is before the heyday of museums. So I suspect it was something small, kind of a traveling curiosities thing. I don't know.
when I first saw that, I thought maybe it was a business that was an illegal business or whatever, and maybe they figured the name would make it better. I don't know, but my mind went straight there, and I don't know why, but I'm like you. It's like, I want to know.
Yeah.
And so I was continuing on this. I'm an eternal optimist. I feel like I there's more to find, and there always is. That's the great thing about being genealogist these days. This is a guy who's had so much written about him. Actually, let me put a pin in that and finish my last thought.
Okay.
He served in the territorial legislature. Well, he was a lawyer, and then out of nowhere, he's nominated and elected to be a representative of the 4th district in the territory, which is impressive. But on his first day there, he is nominated and elected as the Speaker of the House. So I don't know if clearly he's built a reputation. Does it come from his family, his past? Does it come from what I don't know, but clearly he was a well-respected person. And he does seem to be a bit, I don't want to say fragile, because I would crumble in that way too, but you saw that attack piece that I put in there.
Yeah, that was an interesting article.
That
this one right here.
Yeah. This person who is a Republican just tore into him.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't personal. He just wants a Republican in the office, but made the man seem like an absolute idiot who didn't deserve to be there. I don't know how Charles took it. So the legislature in the territory, it only operated for 60 days a year. So the 1956 legislature, he had already served and come back home by this point. This is like October or something that this was published. I thought he was going to serve 2 years. I still haven't been able to find that in the Minnesota territorial laws, but I expected him to serve 2 years, and he just disappeared after 1 year. Not only did he disappear, he stepped away from government, he stepped away from law, and on the 1857 census, when they came to ask him what he did, he just said, "I'm a merchant." It must have really stung being attacked like this.
I think he got his relationship going with Mr. Clark, and I think they started talking about going west because Mr. Dixon, his father-in-law of his deceased wife, had gone out to California and had died of dysentery out there. But there was still that lure of everything that was happening in California. So he and Mr. Clark got together because he eventually sold Mr. Clark's property when he relocated to California. So I think they said, well, let's head south and let's get ready for this big trip. And the two families were on the same wagon train in 1860, but he had to sort of bide his time, and he became a merchant just temporarily to make a little money before they took this trip. That was my understanding. I remember my father talking about this.
That was the trip itself was interesting. Everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, he went on the Oregon Territory." So I thought that certainly he did. But as I dug into it, it didn't make sense. He wouldn't. I mean, to take the Oregon Trail the whole way. Sorry, I said Oregon Territory. He wouldn't have taken the Oregon Trail the whole way because it would have led to Oregon. He wasn't headed to Oregon. We know he ended up in Virginia City and then in Sacramento, and then I found out that the Pony Express started pretty much literally the month he took off. So I have no proof that he went on that, but why wouldn't you if it's going exactly from where you are to exactly to where you're going? And they've got stops every 15 miles with provisions. There's his army giving security along the way because there had been Shoshone attacks the year before. So this is my best guess, is that he went along the Pony Express route in a way, because it wasn't just the Pony Express route; it was also a wagon route that later became called the Overland Trail. So
where would they have started on this? Where would they have joined?
Well, the start is St. Joseph, Missouri, but the history. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting which one I got it from. One of the printed genealogies said that he overwintered in Kansas and started from there.
So Kansas City.
Right.
Okay, so right at the very beginning of the trail, then.
But they said
Yeah.
Kansas, like the
Yeah.
territory.
I can't
So
find my piece of paper that lists a specific starting point.
So, but somewhere in this vicinity, though.
Yeah, that would be what I would expect. All I've got is they started in Kansas.
Okay, and then the end point is. Sorry if I'm giving people vertigo over there.
It ended in Sacramento,
and that's where he ended up.
Yeah.
What's interesting is my dad sucked me into this when I was 16, sitting at the dinner table, talking about Charles, his grandfather, Charles Andrus Gardner, walking the whole distance to Sacramento. And Sarah Clark, the woman he ends up marrying, was on that trip, and she was 10 years old. And Daddy said he fell in love with Sarah on that trip and pursued her until she finally married him in California. But the other amazing thing was that I didn't know how they did this trip. And it was a fluke. I discovered them in the census records for Virginia City. I was just boggled. So they must have just spent the night or something. But the Clarks weren't there. The Clarks don't appear on that. So they were all in the same wagon train, but they must have gone on ahead or stayed in a different town. Maybe there was no room at the inn.
So I suspect he spent more than a night in Virginia City, because it's a good 10 or 15 miles off the trail.
Mm-hmm.
But also,
so it's not a stop here.
No, it's not a stop there. And also his son, I want to say it was Charles, but it may have been an older son, had the same occupation listed on that census as the man whose house they were staying in. Minor space C period, which I take to mean a copper miner.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So that would be odd to me, unless it was an assumption on the enumerator's part, that one of Charles's son became a copper miner in a one-day stay. So I'm guessing that they stayed a couple of weeks or something like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, so there's Virginia City.
Yeah, it was Charles A. Gardner, who's if you look down there, listed as how old is that? 18-year-old? 17-year-old copper miner.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. 17 though?
17 years old?
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm looking at the census record right now.
Yeah.
And then that's another story. The son right below him, I think I've got Edmund.
Well,
have I got that right? Is Edmund not the biological son?
No. Edmund was the son of the woman he married, the third wife, Catherine.
Yeah.
And I have a Gardner cousin up in Oregon, who tells me that everyone says that Edmund was adopted, that he was one of these railroad children. And I kept saying, no, I don't think so. They think his name was originally Perkins or something.
Well, so the man that Catherine, his mom, was married to was Perkins, Leonard Perkins, I think. It's you can link to it through her profile.
I think Catherine's first husband was a Perkins.
Yes. So if you go to Catherine, you'll see that she was married to a Perkins.
Yeah, Leonard.
That Perkins left her and married somebody else in Kentucky.
Right.
4 years before Edmund was born.
Right.
So, yeah, Edmund was born to a mystery father, or was adopted, and he seems to have taken on the name. There was one point, and he was born in Louisiana.
I wondered if that was a mistake on the census.
It was on two separate censuses.
I know. That's so strange, isn't it?
But also, I picked up, and you'll see it if you go to his profile. I picked up he was adopted off to a family in New York, or fostered off for a short while, and either that or there's 2 Edmund Perkins that were born the same year in Louisiana that have ties to New York. So, and I think it's a real thing. Maybe she went away and got pregnant while she was away. Maybe she went away because she was pregnant. The women would typically give their illegitimate children their maiden name. She gave her child her married name, and I'm guessing that was just to avoid the stigma when
Could have been.
in New York. A lot of supposition in there, but yeah, it's
Also, that last entry there on that census record that says there's a Lydia Gardner with him who's 55. That had to have been Charles's sister.
So that's one of my hypotheses. Yeah. So that's in the 1860 census.
Correct.
And you know what?
Yeah.
On the 1857 census, she's living next door to Charles. If you zoom out on the whole page, she's right there with some other family right next door. So she was with Charles's family for a while. Oh. I don't know yet if she's for certain if she's a sister, sister-in-law, an aunt, stepsister. I think because she's 55 and Charles was, what was he at the time? 40.
46, it looks like.
46, yeah.
I think they're siblings, but the person that we think is Charles's father and mother, that was his mother, Dolly Brown, was born in around 1795. And so there's no way that she could also be Lydia's mom, because she would have been 9 years old at the time. So it would be if they share Jesse as their father, then it's going to be a half sister situation. So this might be a good time.
It's certainly not this Lydia Gardner mentioned on this little piece of paper, because she's in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. It's a different Lydia. So
Kay's coming in to say there were a lot of Lydia Gardners, and I was suggesting that the Gardners did seem to have a Lydia problem.
Lydia problem. They couldn't keep a Lydia on it.
Yeah, there are just every time you think you've traced it down, you find another Lydia Gardner.
Someone just mentioned Dolly Brown. Is there any written evidence that was the wife of Jesse Gardner?
Yes. So if you go to Charles Gardner, go to the bottom of Charles Gardner's, down to the research notes under the who was his father, and there's a link there to Jesse's profile.
Okay.
Of course, I can't link up above.
Right. There we go.
Date of birth, with a little bit further. Who was Charles's father?
There we go.
Right there. Just click on the Jesse Gardner link, and that'll take you to Jesse's. Whoop.
There we go. Jesse. Okay.
So this is where I really want to thank Kay and Margaret for helping out. So they dug in and found all sorts of property records. And yes, through those, we know that that Jesse and Dolly were husband and wife. We also know that it seems reasonable to conclude that Jesse died around 1845 because his widow Dolly did a quitclaim deed of some land to Roland, who is another one of Charles's siblings. But yeah, the story here of Jesse is a really compelling story. I'm still in the data gathering stage. As you can see from those, with the tables of the censuses, I'm trying to work out. I haven't been able to find a way to prove it's him, so I'm trying to find ways to disprove, and nothing has ruled him out yet. He's in the. Sorry, I've got a child screaming in the other room.
Okay, there's another Lydia Gardner right here, wife of Asa.
Yeah. So this is our leading candidate right now. Nothing yet to establish that it is his father, but I I feel confident. If it is his father, then I think we can conclude that Charles was probably born in, I keep forgetting, sorry, I don't know New York as well as I should.
Is it Plainfield? Is that
Plainfield? Thank you.
Plainfield.
Plainfield. Well, his dad was operating businesses in Plainfield and in Sangerfield, and had apparently business transactions going on in Troy and other places. He seemed to be he seemed to be a merchant who also made money in real estate, and seemed to fall on hard times right around the time that Charles would have been born. And in fact, was thrown in debtor's prison for at least 60 days, seems to have had his property confiscated. So kind of a tough story there. It's going to be a very colorful story. I hope it ends up being part of Charles's origin story. It's interesting to see. I was saying before we started that I thought Jesse was a lawyer, because there were the documents posted on Ancestry were dockets that showed that he was appearing in court. Well, it turns out those were actually from a list of insolvency cases being heard in 2 different counties, and he was the plaintiff in those. But it seems like Jesse's story has the family being successful in part because of real estate, and in part because of mercantile concern or running a business, and then fall into hard times because of law. And so I find it interesting that law and running a shop, being a merchant, are 2 things that seem to be common threads that run on Jesse's sons. Charles, of course, became a lawyer, but Roland also became a lawyer. As you just said. And then Daniel, another son, got heavily involved in real estate in the Chicago area, to the point where it seems like when he died, his will made provisions for his wife and his kids and his grandkids. And looking a couple of decades later, his grandkids still seem to be very well off, don't have jobs, and are touring Europe. So he seems to have been very successful in investing in Chicago real estate in those early years. So this is an unfinished story here.
It's unfinished. There's more to find, eh?
Well, I like I said before, I'm an eternal optimist. I'm sure we're going to be able to put a bow on this. I'm going at it. I'm trying to go at this problem of who is Charles's father from so many different angles. Nothing has clicked yet. And that's the bit I said, let me put a pin in it, that I wanted to get back to. There's so much written about Charles. So many column inches dedicated to him. He's got an official biography in the Minnesota State Legislative History. But each one of these has just a little bit wrong, like his birthday. Birthday is on Find a Grave, and in the official Minnesota Legislative biography, it's wrong. I don't know where it came from. It's several months off. But he's got all this written about him, but at the end of his life, despite having a family that seemed to love him, and having had his son, at least in the newspaper business, himself having had a close relationship, obviously through all these ads, with the newspaper establishment, despite having lived a life full of adventure and achievement, there was no obituary. There was, if you scroll down to the very bottom, there's just a flimsy little ad. Keep going all the way. Well, it'll say end of life, and it'll be at the bottom of the section there.
Wow.
That's all that we have. It was posted. You can't really see. It looks like February 21, but it was announcing on the 24th that his funeral would be on the 24th. I don't even know if the newspaper came out in time for before the funeral.
Oh man.
But that's it. I would have expected a large kind of a memorial or an obituary, but
Mhm.
and there's still a possibility that there's yet another newspaper archive I need to subscribe to that has it, or that it's on microfilm somewhere.
There's an interesting story about the death up in Savi's Island. My brain is so full; it's about to explode with all this information. So I have a cousin up there who's a descendant of that Charles Gardner, the judge. She is the great grandchild of one of the other sons, from the Catherine wife. She's not entirely related to me. She's a little related to me because of the judge. But there were these other boys that the judge had with Catherine when they reached Oregon. Anyway, Moreach, the Moreach, she's my contact in Oregon, and her last name is Hammond, I believe. Her father was a gardener, so it was like E.B. Gardner or one of those, and she's the one that told me all about the dead child being brought out from Joliet all the way to the Lone Fir Cemetery. So she knows a little bit more than I do, but she's not very communicative. She knows a lot
and didn't hear back in time, or I haven't heard back yet.
She doesn't communicate, because I've tried over the years to try to reach out to her, since she's the closest thing I have to a Gardner relative. But she's just not interested. But she did tell me years ago, oh yeah, it was Dolly Brown. And I go, well, what proof do you have that it was Dolly Brown? She never came up with any proof, and that's why I was sort of up in the air over it.
Yeah. Well, June has a theory here. I don't know if you've pondered that. So, but considering his life has been so full,
I'll tell you something you probably don't know. There was a big fiasco because Catherine, when the judge died, she thought she'd be in fine shape, but apparently it was discovered that there was a mortgage on the property she didn't know anything about. So there was a lot of unhappiness upon the death of the judge. That may be part of the problem, that there was this big mortgage. So that was my understanding of it.
That makes sense.
Susie Hammond knows more about it. She's still up there in Portland somewhere.
Wow.
So that reminds me of another story that I dug up. The one about him. Oh yeah, he lost his arm.
No, I think that's another Charles Gardner, because I've got some pictures of him on the farm at Savi's Island, and he's got both his arms. So I think that's Charles Gardner.
That's another thing. Just like the Gardners had a Lydia problem, every place he traveled had a Charles Gardner problem.
There was a Charles Gardner, an entertainer as well.
Yes, a German entertainer called Danny, or the Dutchman. And so the thing about him closing for Annie Oates, that famous performer who brought Gilbert and Sullivan to the U.S. I still don't know if that is.
You know what? I don't think that's the judge. I think that would be in his repertoire. But I've seen this other guy, Charles Gardner, down in the Berkeley area doing performances. So in the UC Riverside newspaper archives, his name came up a lot.
Well, and he was up and down the West Coast. I saw him in Washington and Oregon, but I didn't know if an entertainer himself would be setting up contracts, because I'd seen other articles about how he had retained the services of lawyers to seal his own contracts. So it's
I don't know.
And then there's the which Charles Gardner went to Hong Kong.
That blew me away. I just can't get over that. How could
Hong
that
Kong
possibly
too?
be? How could he get? I mean, would the whole family get to Hong Kong?
It was just three of them, and it was when he was rolling in money because of this Gardner mining company. I don't know if the mine ever produced dividends for its shareholders, but he seemed to have from his habits, seemed to have had quite a bit of money at that time. He was maintaining multiple residences in Knights Ferry, San Francisco, and Oakland.
Well,
Yeah.
that's partly because of the Clarks were in that same neighborhood, and Mr. Clark was a surveyor and also a miner, I believe. So I think there was that the closeness of the two families, because they came out together on the wagon train.
Right.
But that could have been why that copper mine business came up, and a lot of the Clarks went into mining down in Southern California later on. So I've got lots of newspaper articles about that, the Clarks and their mining.
See, this is where WikiTree is really great. Is we've now got all this information in one place. If we can get you to start adding all this new information, if we can get, I forgot who said, Susie. This photo is
Susie
from,
Hammond.
yeah, it's from Susie's collection. She's apparently got a whole album of the family. So what a great place WikiTree is, that we can, it's one place where we can bring it all together and get a fuller story.
That's fantastic. Yeah. You've done a great job here, Michael. I just want to mention, if people aren't watching this or don't have it on their own, you've put a whole thing about the searches you've done. You've added that in your research notes, which is really, really great. Including, even your searches, what you search. I was going to ask you, because you obviously use the newspapers so much, but you've put the details right there of how you searched and whatnot and where.
This is a new thing I'm doing, and I got to admit, I didn't start doing this from the beginning, and I wish I had. I started doing this when I started confusing myself, and wait a minute, I've already done that search. So I'd recommend doing it from the beginning.
Yeah,
I'm still pretty new to WikiTree because I've been using Ancestry for so many years. So I get over to WikiTree and I'm a little lost. My sister-in-law has been trying to help me, but she's in Hawaii, and she's kind of hard to get.
Well, you'll just have to go to Hawaii to get more help.
I did 2 years ago.
Why'd you come back?
Or we can work in partnership. I'm happy to write up the profiles if you can get that information flowing.
Yeah, that's super.
Yeah, well, and I've got a lot of the newspaper articles I have saved in PDFs, and they're on the Ancestry site in the gallery. So I'm happy to share all of that information that I put together over the years.
Wow. Thank you. Well, that's great. I think we're going to call it here. This, again, wonderful profile. And we've just sort of skimmed through it. I mean, I've breezed through it. I don't know if people have been able to read it as I was going along, but you might want to read it on your own. Let me just put that link back in again.
And if I can make a plug for one of the projects, the Profile Improvement Project, that's where I met Kay Knight. She was my mentor on that. She was fantastic. If you haven't taken it, I would definitely join the project and take the Profile Improvement Project Voyage, where you get a mentor that patiently sits with you and helps you work with WikiTree, teaches you all the tips and tricks. There were times when Kay was asking me to do something that she knew would take me an hour or two because I didn't know the trick, and then she showed me the trick. It's really night and day having all of these tips and tricks and knowing what a profile should look like.
I have to make a special thank you here. I didn't tell you the whole story here. Well, I retired from a lifetime of being a computer consultant, and got married about the same time, and moved to Colorado. And I thought, I've got all this time to do my genealogy research now. That was in 2016. And I was diagnosed with 4th stage bone cancer. And they gave me 2 weeks to live and sent me home from the doctor's office with hospice. And my big panic was, I'm not going to finish my genealogy research. So to see what's surfaced is just mind-boggling, and it just has makes me so glad that I'm still here and that I can pick up the reins and I can run with this and I can hopefully solve these mysteries before I drop dead.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So much. You just don't know, from the bottom of my heart.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Michael.
I know where you're coming from. I nearly died back in 2013, and family's been important. So especially finding WikiTree and having the help and the collaboration that we have from a lot of people, it's just amazing. And I learn stuff every day. So this is great. And Michael, you just took this and ran with it. And when you post on Discord, oh, you found this or you found this, it's just amazing what people can find.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
I think he's a fully fledged elf now.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
I was so wowed when I started reading what was coming up. I went, oh my God, how did they find this stuff? Because I've been looking all my life and I've been missing all these things. So yeah, I've got a lot to learn still. But thank you. Thank you so much.
And I just want to broadcast a big thank you to everyone who has anything to do with having created or maintaining WikiTree or improving it. It is incredible. Greg, I use your apps all the time. I hope it never goes away. It's a brilliant site.
That's good. Well, that's the plan, that we're going to stick around forever. So great.
Yeah.
So thank you all who've joined us for the 6th day of Elfmas. This has been a wonderful segment, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you early in the morning tomorrow for the 7th day of Elfmas. Our video will be live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. UTC, in the wee hours over Pacific Time. Sorry, guys. But yeah, for New Year's Day, we're ringing it in bright and early for the 7th day of Elfmas, 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. UTC, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. Anyways, thank you for everyone today. That was great. Michael, great to meet you. Lee, that was wonderful. And
I'm over the moon. I'm really over the moon. Thank
Excellent.
you so much.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.